Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back. Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back to another fun and exciting episode of This Week in Canada. My name is Roberto Waco Cruz. Thank you so much for joining me. Before we get into it, I want to encourage you to go to the links below and join the Post Millennial subscriber page. This is the best way that you can support myself, the show, and the Post Millennial all as a whole. By giving us just $5 a month, you get an ad-free experience at the Post Millennial. You get all the Canadian and American and international news coverage. It's such a sweet deal. I'd also recommend that you go to Rumble. Rumble is a site like YouTube, but without all the big tech, scary censorship. Check it out now. We get most of our views are on Rumble, and it is highly recommended that you subscribe. It is a competitor to YouTube, and it's actually doing well, and it's Canadian. Let's get going on the show where I have not much to talk about. The news week was a little bit slow, so I want to talk about a couple stories. The main thing I wanted to focus on, and you can tell I'm a little nervous because of how little amount of news there is that the CBC is not good. Now, I know we probably had like 30 episodes by now about how the CBC is not very good, but let's take a good look at this story. The CBC in Edmonton just issued an apology for, I will give them, I can't believe it, the benefit of a doubt that this is the actual thing that happened here. So let's put up the apology on the screen. Earlier in October, we aired 2 stories on what patients can expect in a hospital ICU during the COVID crisis and the strain on nursing staff. We shot footage for these stories at 2 Edmonton training facilities that showed mannequins in beds in a realistic-looking hospital setting due to restrictions. Unfortunately, some of that same footage was then used in a different story about COVID projections and modeling last week. Using those images outside of the context of the training facilities was inappropriate, and we apologize for the error in judgment. The story has been corrected. So that's a pretty big mistake. I would consider that like a massive error. I know if I made that mistake and it got this much backlash, it'd be my neck on the line. But this is going to talk about, and if you don't know the story, that's exactly what it was. They decided to use old footage to talk about the pandemic in Edmonton, thereby deceiving the public in a way. Or at the very least, making it difficult for the public to trust the CBC. Because when you show mannequins in a bed and you're talking about how ICUs are about to be overrun, I can understand how you, the viewer, or myself would go, hey, that's not even a real guy. That's a mannequin or a womannequin. That's not, he's not supposed to be there. He's supposed to be in a shopping mall like this. So this is a big mistake, and it got a lot of attention because it points to just the declining state of the CBC that's been going on for a long, long time. As Brian Lilly points out in his article, his column called Let's Talk About the CBC and Their Very Obvious Bias, he says this is a problem that's gone on since before the departure of Peter Mansbridge, legendary broadcaster Peter Mansbridge. Depends what you think about him, but I tend to like him. I remember as a kid thinking that that's a newsman, you know? That's Walter Cronkite. That's Peter Mansbridge. And Peter Mansbridge himself has said that the CBC as it exists right now is basically useless. Let's pull up this article that you can find on the Post Millennial. The country needs the CBC to be better. He says, quote, I think the country absolutely needs the CBC. Do they need the CBC they've got right now? Probably not. They need it to be better. And that's exactly what I think. It would be, I just want to say that it would be a fantasy. I can't even imagine a world where the CBC is unbiased, is fair and balanced, doesn't have Rosemary Barton. That would be a really nice one. And actually created content that was worth watching. This is all possible. It's not like it's a fever dream to believe that with the amount of funding that the CBC gets, they would be able to crank out a few hits, which is not the case. In that same article by Brian Lilly at The Sun, he says that in the month of September, Canada's top 30 shows were all not original CBC content. The National, during an election month, did not crack the top 30 ever. The only shows that were aired that made the top 30 that were on the CBC were the debates, the leadership debates, federal leaders debates, Coronation Street, and then some British baking show. all things that are not Canadian content. Where's the CBC to create these things? And where's the CBC to clean up their act? There's clearly something wrong in the leadership there. And as Nico has pointed out, rest in peace, Nico. I mean, he's not dead. As Nico has pointed out, the reason that the CBC is in this position is because they keep on hiring these people that get right out of journalism school, have no experience in the real world, couldn't tell you a cool story if their ass depended on them. Sometimes I talk to students and I'll go up to them and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they just start talking about like theory and like their classes. And when they're amongst each other, it's like just a bunch of bees in a jar just talking about, oh, do you have this professor? And do you have this student? Like, oh, what do you think about this theory and this book? It's like, can you tell me one story? Like, what was the closest you've ever been to like getting stabbed, right? Like, what's a cool thing that's happened to you? They don't have any of these experiences. So they go in after these liberal degrees, go to CBC, somehow get an internship, and then just spout out the same nonsense that their teacher taught them, that he used to work at the CBC. This is a real thing that happens. And then now you just have that guy, the professor that loves the CBC, a liberal guy, now just working at the CBC again by their student. It makes no sense. I'm going to move on to another topic because I found this kind of interesting. So let's pull up the article. Chinese conservative group calls on O'Toole to resign over anti-China platform. The Chinese Canadian Conservative Association said that the party needs to be less aggressive towards Beijing because it isolates Chinese Canadian voters. The call comes amid deteriorating relationships with mainland China following the release of diplomats Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, our two beautiful baby boys. This is an interesting story because let's just go right to the end. The leader of the Chinese Canadian Conservatives would end up having to resign over these calls. O'Toole is still the leader. And as it is pointed out, although Chinese Canadian immigrants do not feel a loyalty to the CCP, or they still feel like it's difficult to vote for a party that has a hostile attitude towards China. And I'm just going to come in and say, I don't care too much. We already have parties that appear to not know how to deal with China at all. I mean, the Liberal Party already comes off as weak on the world stage against China. He is clearly not respected. And I don't think the NDP really actively dislike China. I'm going to guess. This is all just kind of speculation. This is just kind of where I'm coming from. But the Conservatives have really an open door to distinguish themselves from the rest of Canada's major parties by saying that we are going to be against China, strong on China, anti-CCP. We don't want relationships with China to get cozier because this doesn't go well. China does not like democracy. They don't like our ideas. They don't like you very much. They don't like me very much. They think that democracy is a weakness in our Achilles heel and one to be exploited. This is not a joke. This is the future of your children and our grandchildren. And so we have to find a way. The Conservatives have to find a way to be able to to appeal to Chinese Canadian voters while still being strong on China. I don't know exactly how to do this. I would imagine perhaps an education campaign. I would say, hey, look at Australia. Look at this country way over there, far away from other democracies and right close to China. Also a parliamentary democracy, similar to Canada in a lot of ways, Commonwealth, similar populations, Canada more influential, higher GDP. China had ambitions to take over Australia for years, and they've done it pretty effectively. Where 1/3 of all of Australia's trade goes to China, whether it's like meat, tin, coal, all goes to China. All of a sudden, you start seeing a lot more Chinese businessmen giving donations to politicians in Australia. You start seeing MPs resigning from bribes in Australia. And then you start seeing China make itself appealing to several different parties across by tricking them all, basically. You tell the Conservatives in Australia, you say, hey, we're savvy businessmen. We know how to fix your economy. Let's like get in bed together and canoodle. You say the same thing to the far left party, the left wing party in Australia. You go, hey, we're like Marxist communists. We'll be solidarity and the working man together. That appears to work. And then with their Chinese diplomacy, they go to the centrists and say, hey, we're diplomats and we know how to play the game. This is the exact same strategy that you're going to see happen in Canada, because I don't think we're smart enough or have the leverage to know how to deal with these guys. Anyway, that was really it. I know that wasn't a very funny episode. Don't know what to do about that, but there really wasn't much news. So I guess I just had to go on a couple rants. Next week, I will create news. I will. I'm not going to say anything, actually. That joke could have went too far very quickly. But what you should do to go too far is give us a donation at thepostmillennial.com for a membership to get an ad-free experience of the website. Only $5. Please, guys. It goes such a far way. Also, check out Rumble, where you can watch all of our videos. We get most of our reviews on Rumble, and it is a great Canadian streaming video platform. Thank you for putting up with me this week. I've been feeling rather under the weather. My head is in a bit of a twirl. So if this wasn't your favorite episode, I apologize. Thank you, and have a good week. I love you.